Welcome to NarrativeNook audio tales where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening.
Matilyn. She's worried about me and kept asking how I'm doing. Roxanne replied with a smile. Lucien nodded and asked casually as he sat down beside the bed. I noticed that one of the doctors was out when I arrived. Did he tell you where he was going? The smile on Roxanne's face was frozen in place when she heard that. She wasn't expecting Lucien to even notice such details, let alone ask about it. After taking a few seconds to regain her composure, Roxanne replied as calmly as possible. I'm not sure. I'll be fine as long as there are people around. It doesn't matter if one or two of them step away for a bit. She then let out a helpless sigh and added, I've already regained consciousness, so you don't need to have so many of them standing by. You should let them head back and get some rest. Lucien seemed to be in deep thought as he retrieved an apple from the grocery bag and slowly peeled it. Knowing Roxanne, she wouldn't ask for desserts immediately after recovering, let alone have me buy them from a store so far away. I know she probably needed some time alone, but I can't seem to figure out why. Her reaction and that of the experts outside the ward all seem rather suspicious. She must have told them something while I was out earlier. Given the situation at hand, her poisoning is the only possible thing they could have been talking about. The look in Lucien's eyes turned gloomy at the thought of that. He stopped peeling the apple and stared solemnly at Roxanne as he asked, Is it true that the poison has been completely removed from your body? Roxanne let out a helpless chuckle after a brief pause. You noticed? She knew she wouldn't be able to hide it from Lucien for long, but she didn't think he would find out so soon. I was planning to tell you after I had found a way to neutralize the poison. I'm sorry I lied to you after promising to not keep secrets from you just earlier, as she continued with an apologetic look on her face. Lucien frowned as the flames of anger began to burn within his eyes. Did Jack pull some kind of trick on us? Did he give you a fake antidote or something? Roxanne shook her head. The antidote is real. It's just that. Lucien's tone grew increasingly colder as he pressed on. It's just what? Since Lucien had already found out about her lies, Roxanne decided to not hide anything from him. The dosage he gave was incomplete. I would need at least 4 to 5 times more of what he gave me in order to completely rid my body of that poison. I had a discussion with the experts earlier. We now have a lead and might be on to something, so you don't have to worry too much about it. Lucien's eyes were clearly filled with anxiousness when he looked at her, but he soon regained his composure and said calmly, I'm not worried. I could just go deal with him again if necessary. If submitting to Jack will save her life, then I shall gladly do it. Roxanne felt touched when she heard that. She reached out to caress his cheek as she said reassuringly, That won't be necessary. I'm confident in my ability to save myself. I mean, I did develop a drug that even the Damaris family couldn't. Jack had shown her some of the Damaris family's books on ancient medicine while they were still on good terms. Those books contained lots of information on all sorts of rare and special medicinal herbs. Roxanne had a feeling that the key to the antidote could be found within those books. Fortunately for her, she had put in the effort to memorize everything in those books. Once the blood test results were out, I should be able to use that information to figure out the poison's contents and synthesize an antidote myself. As Lucien was already prepared for the worst, he nodded after hearing what she said. All right, I trust you. You're the best doctor I know, so you should be able to handle Jack's poison with ease. Roxanne wasn't expecting Lucien to be convinced so easily, so she was caught off guard when she heard him say that. However, you must promise me that you will be honest with me if you ever run into any further issues along the way, Lucien added as he continued peeling the apple. Having been snapped out of her dazed state, Roxanne nodded obediently in response. All right. She then looked Lucien in the eye and said affectionately, Thanks for believing in me, honey. The ward fell into complete silence for a few seconds. What did you just call me? Lucian asked with a look of joy and surprise in his eyes. Roxanne didn't know what came over her just now, but she couldn't bring herself to say it again with him staring at her like that. Her face burned bright red as she looked away to avoid his gaze. Naturally, Lucian wasn't about to let her off the hook so easily. He quickly put the apple down and pressed on. "Oh, what did you just call me? Say it again." The sexual tension in the ward intensified as he continued to tease her. Roxanne was about to hide under the blanket when her phone started ringing on the side. Realizing that it was the ringtone she had chosen for her kids, Roxanne pushed Lucian back as she said, Our kids are calling. Hurry up and answer the phone." She hadn't contacted them for a few days, so she figured they must have been worried sick. Although Lucian had already told them that Roxanne was away on a business trip, Archie and Benny were very smart, so it was only natural that they would get worried about her. Lucian had no choice but to stop teasing her and answer the phone. Even so, he kept his scorching gaze on her as he held the phone up to her ear. Mommy." The kids' adorable voices could be heard the moment the call got through. Yes, it's me. Have you kids been behaving yourselves lately?" Roxanne replied with a smile. Feeling glad that they could finally speak to Roxanne, the kids started telling her what they had been doing lately. Yeah, we have. We even helped Miss Catalina do the dishes." "I helped too." "I helped Miss Catalina with the laundry." The look in Roxanne's eyes grew gentle when she heard their adorable voices. "Oh, really? I'm glad to hear that." Their tone grew a little depressed as they asked, when will you come home, Mommy? We really miss you." Unsure of what to say, Roxanne simply stared at Lucian in silence. Daddy said you would be coming home tonight. Is that true?" Archie pressed on. Roxanne fell silent for a few seconds before replying with a smile. "Yeah, that's right. I'm already at the airport, so I'll be arriving in Horrington later tonight. Behave yourselves and wait for me at home, okay? I'll buy you all some gifts on my way back." Okay, Mommy. We'll wait till you're back home before we go to bed." Roxanne then changed the topic by asking them how they had been doing lately. The kids then told her everything that had happened throughout the past few days, and they continued chatting happily until it was time for lunch. After reluctantly ending the call, Roxanne's expression grew depressed as she stared at the black screen of her phone. I want to make a trip back tonight. The kids will get worried if I don't show up, she said while looking up at Lucian. You've only just recovered, and you have yet to make a full recovery, Lucian replied with a disapproving frown. I know what I'm doing. At least I can get off the bed and walk around now, Roxanne explained patiently. After arguing for a bit, Lucian gave in and said, you can't leave the hospital. If you must see them, I'll have Caden bring them over. If you do that, they'll find out about me being sick, Roxanne protested with a hesitant look in her eyes. She didn't want the kids to worry about her at all. We'll tell them you caught a cold after getting off the plane, so I had you sent to a hospital for treatment. They're still kids, so I don't think they'd be able to find out the truth, Lucian suggested after giving it some thought. Roxanne still felt it wasn't a good idea, but decided to go along with it anyway. Lucian then stepped aside and gave Caden a call. Having dropped off Madeline and Electra, Caden had just arrived at the hospital when he got Lucian's call. I have sent Ms. Lane and Ms. Xander home safely, Mr. Farwell, Caden reported immediately after answering the phone. Got it. I need you to head over to the manor and bring the kids over, Lucian replied. Caden froze. I thought you wanted to keep this a secret from the kids? Wouldn't they find out what happened if I bring them over to the hospital? I want you to go pick them up tonight. If they ask any questions, just tell them that Roxanne is being treated at a hospital because she had a fever after getting off the plane, Lucian replied. As Lucian had already come up with an excuse, Caden knew better than to say any further. He then waited till it was nighttime before heading over to the manor as instructed. The three kids came rushing over the moment his car pulled up in the courtyard. The excited smiles on their faces faded the moment they saw Caden step out of the car. Oh, It's you, Mr. Lawson. Caden felt his heart ache when he saw how disappointed they were. Come on, I'll bring you kids to see your mommy and daddy. Their eyes lit up when they heard that, but the look of joy was soon replaced with concern when they recalled what Roxanne said. Your mommy told us to wait for her at home. Archie stared at Caden as he asked, Did something happen to our mommy, Mr. Lawson? Why else would mommy not answer our calls and send Mr. Lawson over to pick us up? Benny and Estella, too, grew worried after hearing what Archie said. Caden felt bad for lying to them, but he knew he had no choice but to do so. It's not that serious. Mrs. Farwell had a fever on the way back, so Mr. Farwell brought her to the hospital for an examination. It's nothing to worry about. Seeing as the kids were still doubtful of his words, Caden added, If you are still worried, then come with me to the hospital and see for yourselves. Mrs. Farwell wouldn't have sent me over to pick you kids up if something serious had happened to her, right? The kids then decided to believe him for the time being and got into the car after saying goodbye to Catalina. The atmosphere in the car was particularly gloomy as all three of the kids were in a subdued mood throughout the drive. Caden, too, let out a helpless sigh as he didn't know how he could comfort them. These kids have no idea that they nearly lost their mother forever. The car slowly came to a halt in front of the hospital. Caden got out of the car and whirled around to get the kids out, only to see they were already standing outside, staring up at him with eagerness shining in their eyes, waiting for him to take them inside. Caden internally sighed at the kids' eagerness. Suppressing the upset rising within him, he patted the children's heads comfortingly. Let's head inside. The kids nodded obediently and followed him into the building. Before entering the elevator, Caden sent a message to Lucian, informing his boss of their arrival. The elevator dinged at the top floor. When the doors slid open, they saw Lucian waiting for them outside. Daddy! The children excitedly dashed out of the elevator and clung onto Lucian's legs. Lucian gently ruffled the kids' heads before nodding at Caden. Thank you for the trouble. You can take a break tomorrow. Caden complied respectfully before shutting the elevator doors. He left, giving the family some time and space. Daddy, where's mommy? Archie urged as he nervously tugged on the hem of Lucian's shirt. Lucian dropped his gaze to him. She's in her room. He turned around and led them toward Roxanne's room. The children trailed after him closely. When they saw their mother lying on the bed, tears started flowing down their cheeks. Mommy, what happened? Are you okay? We're so worried about you. Their parents didn't come home for the past few days. Their mother didn't even pick up her phone. They had been obedient and didn't cause any trouble, but the truth was, they were sick with worry. The brave front they held up finally crumbled when they saw Roxanne's pallor. Roxanne didn't expect the kids to be so worried. Her heart ached at their tears. She tried to push herself up to get down from the bed. However, the kids hurriedly raced to her side when they saw her intention. Mommy, lie back down. Roxanne couldn't do anything but wipe their tears away. Don't. CY. I'm fine. I was just too tired and slightly feverish for the past 2 days. I'll be fine after 2 days rest. She paused a beat before smiling at them. Look at me. I'm fine. Despite her assurance, Estella's tears didn't stop falling. But, Mommy, you don't look so good, she sobbed. Just like the last time when you feel unconscious. Just recalling the memory flooded Estella with fear. Her grip on Roxanne's sleeve tightened. The rims of Roxanne's eyes turned red. She felt bad about worrying them. I truly am fine. Have you forgotten that I'm the most amazing doctor? I can cure all kinds of sickness, much less a fever. She held their tiny hands and pulled them to her forehead. Feel that? It's not hot anymore. The kids gently rubbed her forehead and nodded while tears continuously rolled down their cheeks. Roxanne consoled with a smile. Be good and wait for me at home. I'll rest in the hospital for 2 more days, then go back and accompany you. Benny shook his head. Should we want to stay at the hospital with you, Mommy? Estella nodded her head firmly, agreeing with Benny's suggestion. I want to stay with Mommy too. Archie didn't say anything and merely stared at her as he continued crying. Roxanne patted each child's head and declined. You can't. My fever is gone, but not my cold. You'll contract it if you stay here. I don't have the energy to treat you now. The children pressed their lips into a firm line, an expression of their displeasure. They stood by the bed and stared at her. Their eyes conveyed their desire to stay. Guilt surged within Roxanne when she caught the children's worried gaze. However, she silently averted her gaze. I had your dad bring you here because I didn't want you to continue worrying about me. Now that you see I'm fine, you can be assured of my well-being. I'll worry about your health again if you catch my cold. Despite her explanation, Benny was still unwilling to leave. Archie gave in and said, we'll head back then. Take good care of yourself, Mommy. Hearing their brother's words, Benny and Estella couldn't voice their disagreement despite their unwillingness. Roxanne let out a relieved sigh when they finally conceded. She nodded with a smile. I got it. I'll take good care of myself so that I can go home to you as soon as I can. You must pick up our call, Archie demanded with a grim look on his face. Roxanne knew the kids were worried sick for getting out of touch with her for the past few days. Her guilt clawed at her at that knowledge, so she agreed to Archie's demand. With her promise, the children finally relented and released Roxanne's hand reluctantly. Roxanne didn't dare to meet their gazes and hurriedly turned her gaze to Lucian. Lucian, you can send them back now. She was scared tears would flow from her eyes if she continued locking gaze with them. Guilt slammed upon her since she should stay by the children's side seeing they were so upset. However, she couldn't discharge from the hospital. Thus she could only have Lucian take care of them on her behalf. Fear gripped Lucian as he watched the kids being with Roxanne. He recalled how close she was to losing them. However, he quickly snapped out of his flashback and collected his feelings at Roxanne's cue. He nodded at the children and promised, I'll take good care of your mother. Going back obediently is the biggest help you can give to your mommy and me. He stepped closer to the kids and patted their heads before bending down and carrying Estella into his arms. He reached his empty hand out to Archie and Benny. Benny took his hand with tears still flowing while Archie held his brother's hand. The kids cast a longing glance over their shoulders at Roxanne. Roxanne waved at them with a smile. She could feel the prick of tears at the back of her eyes. It was such a close shave and I would have lost them. Watching Lucian and the kids leaving through the door, Roxanne's gaze grew determined. I will do all I can to cure myself for the kids' sake. They finally got a complete family after going through so much. I won't ever let their situation revert to the past. In the meantime, Lucian shut the backseat door after the children got in the car. He got in the driver's seat and pulled away from the hospital toward the manor. On the way there, the kids couldn't stop crying. The atmosphere in the car was tense. Lucian's heart ached for the children when he caught their red, puffy eyes through the rearview mirror. I promise you I'll take good care of your mommy, he swore. Benny sniffled before sobbing. I trust you, Daddy. Every time Mommy got sick, you would take good care of her. When Mommy was sick before, Daddy would stay by Mommy's side, and Mommy would get better every time. I'm sure this time is no different. Guilt clenched Lucian's stomach at Benny's trust. His lips curled into a faint smile before answering, that's for sure. If they knew, they almost lost Roxanne because of me. I wonder if they would still trust me like this. The children were clueless about his thoughts. They merely pleaded with him to take care of their mother well. Lucian agreed with a heavy heart. Lucian glimpsed at the rearview mirror again when the kids' voices had gotten softer. Exhaustion from all the crying finally set in. Benny and Estella were sound asleep with their heads leaning against each another. Lucian glanced at the passenger seat and was met with Archie's wide-awake eyes. Shocked, Lucian questioned, You're still awake? I thought all of them had fallen asleep. Archie's eyes were red and puffy too. Yet, he still kept a solemn look on his face. Daddy, Mommy has been sick for many days already, right? Lucian's expression grew tense at his question. He wasn't sure if he should tell his son the truth. Archie is the most mature of the three. Explaining the situation to Archie first is the best option if I want to tell them the truth. They were still crying until a while ago, though. I don't think it's the right time to tell them yet. After a few minutes of silence, Lucian decided to keep it from them. No, that's not it. Don't think too much. Your mother just got a cold and a fever. She'll be better soon. The second he finished, Archie immediately asked, but Mommy never went on such a long business trip before. Lucian's expression didn't falter as he said, that was because she was worried no one would take care of you, your brother, and your sister if she was gone for too long. Now that you have me, she can put her heart in her stomach. A mask of concentration overtook Archie's face at Lucian's answer. He's right. Mommy wouldn't go on long business trips before because she knew we would be waiting for her at home. Now that we're living with Daddy, Mommy can be more at ease. But I still feel something doesn't add up. Lucian gazed ahead as he drove, but occasionally would shoot glances to check on the kids in the back seat. He was fighting in his mind about whether to tell them the truth. Suddenly, Archie's voice broke the silence. He muttered with a frown, Our hearts felt heavy the last time Mommy fainted. It's the same this time. We shouldn't have that feeling if Mommy only has a cold and fever. Besides, we felt it a few days ago. I'm sure Mommy's condition is not just a simple fever. However, he noted his father's avoidance of telling him the truth, so being the thoughtful child that he was, he didn't continue hounding his father about it. No matter what's wrong with Mommy, I trust that you'll take good care of her as long as you're there. We have faith in you, Daddy. His words were a copy of what Benny said earlier. When Mommy was sick before, Mommy always got better in the end under Daddy's care. I trust that this time will not be any different. Lucian couldn't get a word out of his mouth at Archie's absolute trust. Archie didn't mind Lucian's silence. Instead, he said, Daddy, all you have to focus on is caring for Mommy. Leave Benny and Essie to me. I'll watch over them. You can't let anything happen to Mommy, okay? Archie's voice cracked at the end. Lucian glimpsed at the rearview mirror again and saw the unshed tear in the corner of his eyes. His heart clenched again. I got it. I won't let anything happen to your mother. I'll protect her even if I have to give up my life. Archie shook his head fervently. No. I want both Daddy and Mommy to be safe and sound. We want Mommy to come back, but Daddy, you can't leave us too. His words moved Lucian's heart. Lucian comforted. All right. I'll come back with your mother. Don't be scared. Archie finally nodded as he cried. Lucian sent them back to the manor. When the children woke up, they were still feeling a bit down. As he was worried about them, he watched them wash up and return to their rooms before leaving the house. Back at the hospital, Roxanne was still awake. Lucian quickened his pace when he saw the lights in her ward were still on. Why are you still up? He was worried when he saw Roxanne sitting on the bed in a daze. Roxanne returned to her senses after she heard his voice and smiled. I've slept too much for 4 days straight, so I can't fall asleep now. Then, she asked about the kids. Where are the kids? Are they asleep? I've tucked them in bed before coming here, Lucian replied. Roxanne felt more at ease hearing that. Soon after, she started worrying about him. You look pale. You should get a good rest at home. People might think Lucian was the one who was sick after seeing his face. Hearing that, Lucian ran his hand down his face instinctively. Then, he forced a smile. I had the experience of being unable to sleep for days for work, so it's no big deal. He walked up and sat next to the bed. Then, he looked at Roxanne with a tender gaze. Besides, how can I leave you all alone at the hospital? I'm sure the kids wouldn't let me do that. Roxanne gave him a puzzled look. What has that got to do with the kids? With a smile, Lucian told her what the kids had told him in the car earlier. Roxanne felt a warm sensation in her heart after she knew how protective they were of her. I was afraid they would be scared after knowing it. I never thought. As she spoke, she smiled and glanced at Lucian. They weren't scared because you were with them, and that's why they were confident. Perhaps this was the power of paternal love. With that, they looked at each other and grinned. Roxanne made room for him and said, It's getting late now. Come and get some rest. You've got huge dark circles under your eyes. There's no rush. Since you can't fall asleep, I want to seek your permission for something, Lucian said while he remained seated. Roxanne got serious when she saw his darkened expression. What is it? Lucian's brows furrowed slightly, thinking of how to deliver the news. After a few minutes, he finally broke the silence. Jack's second demand is for your research institute to work with them again. I've already drawn up the statement of unilateral termination of the contract so that I can get the antidote. I only need to release. Roxanne interrupted before he could finish. Enovi. Lucian stopped talking and looked at her helplessly. You don't have to worry about the funds. Farwell Group and Queen Group will pay you a large sum as the termination fee. You can use the money to increase employee benefits. It won't matter if you take the money from the Damaris family. Roxanne said solemnly, I'm the person in charge of the research institute. If you want to terminate the contract with us, I'll try to look for another business partner. But I'll never consider working with the Damaris family. After knowing the man that Jack was, Roxanne decided not to get involved with him in any way. She wouldn't let Jack threaten them with this and let him have his way. Lucian fell silent after seeing her firm attitude and hesitated. I know how you feel, but now is not the time for you to burn your bridges with Jack. He knew if the Research Institute formed a collaboration with the Damaris Group, Roxanne would still hold value to Jack. In that case, there would be hope for her to get the antidote from Jack if they couldn't develop it. Elle developed the antidote. Roxanne sounded determined. I'm sure he'll make excessive demands from us every time we ask for an antidote from him if we do as he says this time. Do you really want to agree to his demands? She was displeased. Didn't you say you trust me? I'm sure I can do it. Naturally, Lucian knew Jack would make more excessive demands in the future. However, he had no choice but to accept it for Roxanne's sake. When he saw Roxanne's determination, he gradually gained confidence in her. The two gazed at each other for what seemed like forever before Lucian compromised. Okay, I got it. We'll do as you say. I will annul the statement, and we can continue to work together. A smile crept onto Roxanne's face after he gave in. Lucian finally stood up after they decided on what to do. Roxanne thought he was going onto the bed to rest, so she made space for him. With a deep gaze, Lucian said, I'm thankful for your invitation, darling. But you just recovered, and the bed is too small. I don't want you to feel squeezed, so I'll take the couch. Before Roxanne could respond, Lucian turned and walked to the couch by the door. Roxanne belatedly realized what he had called her and started to blush. Watching him lie down on the couch, she also slowly lay down. Lucian turned off the light, and the ward was plunged into darkness. The two kept their silence, each with their own thoughts. Early the following day, Jack opened the social media app and looked up news about Farwell Group and the Research Institute. According to his agreement with Lucian, the latter should have already released a statement about the termination of the contract on the internet at that hour. He waited for an hour, but there was no sign of Farwell Group releasing the statement. Jack couldn't help but think of the marriage that hadn't been announced so far, and his expression turned cold. Lucian Farwell. How dare you? How dare you mess with me when Roxanne's life is in my hands? At the thought of that, Jack gave Kevin an instruction with a darkened expression. Give Lucian a call. He wanted to know what Lucian was thinking. Frightened by his gloomy aura, Kevin quickly took out the phone and called Lucian. In the meantime, Lucian and Roxanne couldn't fall asleep all night. They opened their eyes and sat up when the sun had barely risen. Roxanne continued to think about the composition of the antidote, while Lucian finally had time to handle Farwell Group's affairs. A loud ringing broke the silence and disrupted their concentration. Lucian came back to his senses and glanced at the caller ID. His face darkened, and hesitation flashed across his eyes. Is it from Jack? Roxanne looked over and saw Lucian's change in expression. Immediately, she knew who had called. Lucian scrunched his eyebrows in tacit vindication. Upon seeing that, Roxanne put away her thoughts and said in a low voice, I'll call him back. I have something to tell him. Hearing that, Lucian hesitated for a moment but eventually declined the call. On the other end, Kevin looked perplexed when Lucian declined the call. Mr. Damaris, Mr. Farwell is not picking up the call. That jerk. Jack was enraged. How dare he mess with me? I'll never let him off the hook. Kevin lowered his head and kept his breath quiet after seeing his fury. The atmosphere inside the office abruptly turned tense. All of a sudden, Jack's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and furrowed his brows when he saw the caller ID. Roxanne? Isn't she with Lucian now? Why is she calling me back instead of Lucian? Jack was skeptical and finally answered the call after a while. Miss Jarvis, you're awake? On the other end, Roxanne's voice was full of anger. I've overestimated you, Jack. Being the Damaris family's heir and a doctor, I can't believe you used your knowledge to poison me. Don't you think you've failed the Damaris family's name? Hearing her reprimand, Jack's eyes flashed hostility as the corners of his lips slowly curled up. You still have the time to criticize me. It seems that you are very energetic. It's all thanks to you, Roxanne responded coldly. Narrowing his eyes, Jack sneered. Since you know I did it, you should be clear that your life is in my hand. What's your attitude? Then, he questioned coldly, where's Lucian? Pass the phone to him. Roxanne rejected without hesitation. He has nothing to say to you. This is between us. Jack, don't you dare threaten him with me again. She would never allow herself to be anyone's weakness. Seeing her aggressive demeanor, Jack was so mad that he burst into laughter. Very well. Why do you think you regained consciousness? Hasn't Lucian told you? He only got the antidote from me after agreeing to 3 conditions. He thought Roxanne wasn't aware of it, so he said arrogantly, in order to get the antidote for you, Lucian has agreed to terminate the cooperation with your research institute. Moreover, he got married to another woman. Although he wasn't sure of the authenticity of the marriage certificate yet, he wanted to use it to provoke Roxanne. At first, he thought Roxanne would be enraged by this. To his surprise, she sounded calm on the other end of the line. I'm aware of all this. Just give up. I'm the person in charge of the research institute. Even if we terminate the contract with Farwell Group, we will not work with you. As for Lucian's fake marriage, Roxanne didn't plan to expose it yet. You got a death wish. Jack was livid. Roxanne, do you think Lucian got the real antidote yesterday? Roxanne uttered firmly, of course, I know it's not real, but I'll develop the antidote with my own strength. My life will only be in my own hands. However, Jack felt as if he had heard a joke. He was dumbfounded at first, then broke into laughter. You will develop the antidote? Stop dreaming. Is the Damaris family's secret technique a joke to you? There's not a chance even if you ask Harvey for help. Roxanne's expression turned solemn when she heard him belittling her professor. I'm Professor Lambert's student. If I can develop the antidote to your poison, so can he. I'm not asking him for help because I don't want to worry him. You'd better be more respectful. Since you are so confident, then give it a try. If you don't get the second bottle of antidote before tonight, you will die from poisoning. Don't come crying to beg me, Jack snorted coldly. Without waiting for Roxanne to speak, he hung up right away. He didn't believe that anyone other than him could make an antidote to his poison. Lucian's expression froze slightly when the phone was hung up. He had a lot to say. On second thought, he swallowed all his unspoken words. Right now, all he wanted was for Roxanne to concentrate and find a way to develop the antidote. Everything else did not matter. At worst, he would beg Jack again. Roxanne could sense his worry, so she comforted him softly. The blood test results should be out soon. I will think of a way. The look on Lucian's face eased up a little after hearing that. I have faith in you. Once again, a blanket of silence fell over the room. Lucian knew Roxanne was occupied with thinking about the antidote again, so he didn't disturb her. All of a sudden, someone knocked on the door. Breaking out of her reverie, Roxanne looked at the door in confusion. She thought it was Madeline. Lucian stood up and opened the door. He felt much more relaxed when he saw the person at the door. Lucian, old Mr. Lomax might have found some composition of Jack's poison. Jonathan announced excitedly, and then he thought of something, causing his expression to turn grim. How is Roxanne doing? We aren't late, are we? He carefully observed Lucian's expression after he was done talking. Then, he began murmuring, I don't think we're late, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't look like this. As soon as those words fell, Roxanne's voice sounded from inside before Lucian could reply. Is that Jonathan? Why aren't you coming in? She heard Jonathan's voice at the door for a long time and felt strange since he wasn't coming in. Jonathan sighed in relief when he heard her voice. Taken aback, he asked, You're awake, Roxanne? You too got the antidote? He looked at Lucian in disbelief. Lucian remained silent and nodded respectfully at Peregrine, who was right behind Jonathan. Then, he turned around and brought them into the ward. Jonathan was overjoyed when he saw Roxanne sitting up on the bed. You're finally awake, Roxanne. We were so worried for the past few days. I thought, forget it. Let's not talk about that. Everything is fine now that you have regained consciousness. How are you feeling? Do you feel unwell? Seeing his excitement, Roxanne couldn't help but chuckle. I'm sorry I made you worry. I feel much better now. Then, she looked curiously at the person behind Jonathan and asked hesitantly, I heard you mention old Mr. Lomax. Is he the person I'm thinking of? The two finally realized they hadn't introduced Peregrine to Roxanne. Jonathan took half a step back and stood behind Peregrine as he said, This is the King of Medicine of Morania, Peregrine Lomax, also known as old Mr. Lomax. He came to treat you specially. Peregrine Lomax? Upon hearing that, Roxanne reeled in shock. What do you mean by King of Medicine of Morania? I can't even find the antidote for the poison that young man made. I've failed my title. Peregrine stayed up for a few nights to browse through his medical books. He was beyond exhaustion. Coupled with the frustration of failing to find the antidote, his expression looked grim. Lucian comforted, Please don't feel bad, old Mr. Lomax. Jack said he learned the method of developing this poison from the ancient medical books of the Damaris family. Understandably, you couldn't find the antidote. Peregrine frowned slightly and suddenly exclaimed, no wonder I couldn't find what I wanted even after going through all the medical books.
Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.